Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Title Update 3. Today we finally get to Dual Blades and the new best builds in this update. This time we have some big important topics to discuss in the context of Omega. We have non-Omega sets, but we also have Omega focus sets to maximize the value of something like Mind's Eye. So please use the timestamps, there's a lot to talk about. We'll begin with Mind's Eye though. Why is this so important and even set affecting for Omega hunts? A big part of why you use Mind's Eye is that special mode, the Panto Enrage mode, which makes all the hit zones worse than normal. Panto's Enrage must be stopped by breaking leg wounds over and over, and so it's a problem. And especially in the final phase where it's a nightmare, especially important. For most players, anything that's going to help deal with that mode is going to be important. Now Mind's Eye is an offensive skill which increases your damage against a hard hit zone. Mind's Eye at level 3 provides you with a 30% damage bonus against those hard targets. For us, it means a hit zone of less than 45. Without slashing damage, you want to be attacking the hind legs normally, right? They have a 60 hit zone for slash, which is pretty solid. Meanwhile, the head is 45 by default and the forelegs are 40. Mind's Eye works against hit zones under 45. So in that context, that would just be the forelegs when out of the enraged state. To do a comparison, you're getting 20% damage for attacking the hind legs at a 60 hit zone compared to the forelegs at a 40 hit zone by default without Mind's Eye. But then with Mind's Eye, when you're attacking those forelegs with the sub 45 hit zone, you're gaining that 30% damage. So there's a solid reason to use it, but not enough compared to a normal set using crit boost and that kind of thing if you are actually attacking those hind legs. Now when Omega enters that Panto mode, the special enrage, that's when all of this changes. Omega's hit zones change and for the worse. The head goes down to a 40 for slash damage, the forelegs go down to a 28, the hind legs, our usual best targets, they're down to 35, that's almost half. Suddenly your best option becomes the head as the highest hit zone but below 45. That can be unreliable though, especially when playing with others. You might not want to mess up with the aggro. More importantly, your goal in the Panto mode is to break the legs, to break wounds there to end that mode. So, the 35 hit zone on the hind leg string Panto mode, that's the best target here. And if you have Mind's Eye on at level 3, you're getting a 30% damage bonus for that. Hopefully that makes it clear why Mind's Eye is a very valuable thing and how and when you would use it in this fight. If you were the perfect player, it wouldn't be needed. But you know, the final phase, while Panto mode is going, that is the thing that catches the most people, gives them the most strife. Giving you a tool to end that sooner should make your fight a lot easier. That's the reason to do it. Now obviously Mind's Eye is a 3 slot, so it's pretty demanding on your offensive decorations. It actually changes what we'd run for a Thunder set instead of the usual Legaicrus Dual Blades because of it. So today we have a special Mind's Eye set for Omega, but we also have a special multiplayer or group version of a build. What does that mean? What's a multiplayer version? It's because of this, Omega Resonance. At level 1 it provides you with a buff that swaps every 90 seconds. That buff grants you affinity or raw if you're fulfilling its conditions. To get the affinity, you need to be close to one other hunter, within the blue ring. When it swaps after 90 seconds to the red ring, you're getting the far resonance for raw benefits, and for that you need to make sure no other hunter is within that bigger red ring. In our case, we only care about the 2 set bonus, so that's a 20% affinity bonus and 10 raw. Those are great numbers and basically means if you're willing to play around these resonance ranges, you can get big value out of this multiplayer set, as you'll see in the math. But naturally, resonance literally doesn't work if you don't have other hunters in the hunt with you. Whether that's a literal player or an AI support hunter, because palicos don't work for this. And you know, on top of that, you might not just want to be thinking about positioning with this resonance thing for the whole fight. If that's the case, then go for the solo set. Next, we need to do an important reminder about evade window in eating meals. You want to be eating food for evade window. These sets will use low or even no evade window, but obviously you want evade window in a Dual Blades build. To get it then, you simply eat food. What you're looking for is tumbler meal in low or high, which as you can see comes from mud shrimps or turbid shrimps for regular eating. Low provides essentially 2 evade window levels, where high provides 3. On that note, you want to be eating feasts rather than regular meals because of the attack, defense and element boost that provides. In this case, you'd be looking at the Azus meal because as you can see, that comes with tumbler meal high, so it's just perfect. Plus don't forget in a previous update, Dual Blades Perfect Evade was slightly buffed, kinda like they gave us Evade Window 1 by default, so even less reasons to waste a decoration slot on Evade Window. So make sure you're eating for it. As usual though, I need to give Josh his deserved credit for his work on this video and the builds in general. Omega is a special case, and so things like the mind's eye topic and the math to decide whether it's worth it, why and when, is his work. Not to mention the builds themselves that I'm presenting today, as the one who just actually plays dual blades. Also, I'd like to thank the data miner for the talisman information back in TU 2.5, thanks to DTL Nor. With that, we can understand what's possible, and it greatly affects the peak builds we can form. With that said though, let's begin. We begin with the mind's eye set for the purpose of Omega. With this setup, you want an artian weapon. The boost will be 4 attack boost and 1 sharpness. In the offensive decorations, we have the element boost, so in this case thunder, and then 1 crit element. We have razor sharp and handicraft, and then we have the mind's eye taking up the final slot. Don't forget, for Omega specifically, you're using a thunder weapon for most of the fight. But when the clone comes out, you want a fire weapon, because that's the thing it's weakest to. This helps us kill it as fast as possible. This is again an artian weapon with the same reinforcement bonus setup. For its offensive decorations, we go 5 out of 5 crit boost and then the fire attack and crit element. We don't care about sharpness help with this setup because the clone dies or you die before it'll matter. So you may as well have as much damage as possible. For this armor set then, we have the Guardian Ebony Helm in beta, the Xoshia chest in beta, the Guardian Ebony gloves in beta. We have the new Omega waist, and Seragios legs in beta. Now with this you want a strong rarity 8 talisman. The goal of this is to have 3 attack on it, then you use the offensive slot for another attack decoration, giving you 4 attack boost overall. This gives you the % bonus increase to that, very important. With this you can get one other relevant level of a skill. In our case, that would either be 1 agitator like I have here, or 1 burst. For the bonus slots, having more is nice, but not required. Here are the decorations that we use to achieve this skill list. This gives us the full agitator and burst, as well as the counter strike, with my setup full divine blessing, which is really nice for this fight. We got 2 adrenaline rush, 2 constitution in my case, and this gives us the set bonus for ebony, the burst boost 1, and guardian's protection, the ward of wyvria. Let's take a look at the math to show you how good this set is. We have 225 base raw, increased by 2% from attack 4. Bring us to 229.5. Then we have all the flat increases, including agitator 5 with the assumed 65% uptime, as well as the Odo 2-piece, and everything else listed here, bringing us to 316.5. Multiply that by 32% for white sharpness, and it brings us to 417.78. We have 15% reliable affinity from the base Artian and agitator 5 with the assumed 65% uptime, and no crit boost with this setup. So the default damage increase on your crits is 25%. That's 15% of the time, so it's more like an overall 3.75% damage increase. So we multiply that by the last number, and that brings you to 433.4 effective raw. This is noticeably lower than other sets, but the idea and point of it is to engage with Mind's Eye. Mind's Eye is giving us a straight up 30% damage increase. The whole time you're attacking the forelegs in non-Panto mode, but most importantly during Panto mode, it's an incredible 30% damage increase on the head and the hind legs, allowing us to break that leg, end the mode, and maximize our damage, taking what is the scariest part of the fight and minimizing how long it's actually going by engaging with Mind's Eye. Next up, we have the group set, which has seriously good effective roll, the highest of the lot today, but it requires you to engage with the resonance set bonus, which again means playing near other hunters or far away enough from them depending on the mode. This set will use slightly different offensive decorations, engaging with crit boost to fairly compare it to the solo set if that was using crit boost. So basically, same Artian setup, all the attack boost reinforcements with 1 sharpness, and these offensive decorations. Here's the armor set. Omega helm, Xoshia beta chest, Omega gloves, and then the gore waist and legs in beta. With this setup, we have the rarity 8 talisman. Once again, 3 attack boost with the 1 offensive slot going to another attack boost to grant you that % attack boost bonus. The second skill there could be a few options, like 1 adrenaline rush like me, or you could go for burst or weakness exploit if you have that instead. The bonus 1 slots are nice, but not required. Here are the decorations we use to achieve this skill list, resulting in full weakness exploit, 3 agitator, full counter strike, the antivirus, 1 adrenaline rush, 1 burst. We get the gore 2-piece set bonus and the 2-piece for resonance from Omega, with other utility perks based on how you use your 1 slots. Now we get to the math with an important note. 2-piece resonance is 20% affinity and 10% roll, but each one is only available half the time. So we cut that down by 50% for an average for the math. More like 10% affinity, 5% roll. Then we have the different assumed uptime. We assume 60% reliable uptime for the far raw buff because that's harder to manage, where we assume 90% uptime for the close affinity buff because that's way easier. This then allows us to do one average for the math and keep this all understandable and clean. So let's take a look. We have 225 base raw on the weapon, increased by 2% from attack 4, bring us to 229.5. Then we have all the flat increases, including just +3 from resonance 2 with that 60% assumed uptime, bringing us to 281.5. Multiply that by 32% for white sharpness, that brings you 384.78. Then we have the 74% assumed affinity, including that agitator 3 with 65% assumed uptime, and the resonance 2 for the affinity bonus, which we assume has a 90% uptime. So we have 3 crit boosts in this up. That's a 34% damage increase on those crits, which is 74% of the time. So that averages more to a 25.16 damage increase. So we multiply that by the last number, and that brings you to a very impressive 482 effective raw. Our solo set, as we'll soon look at, has 476. So it's literally the highest effective raw set by 6 effective raw. So if you are up for playing around resonance, the value is clearly there. But if not, just go with a solo set and don't worry about this. Let's now move on to the non-Omega focused setups. This is what you'd use for every monster other than Omega, maybe Omega 2 if you feel like it. Basically, your element match as usual, but with a focus on crit boost rather than mind's eye, as we talked about for Omega. In these setups then, you have all 5 elements. You can see I've only got 4 or 5 because I don't have the perfect water setup. So for fire, dragon, ice, and water, you're going to be using an artian weapon. But for the thunder, you're actually using the TU3 Dual Blades. This is because its special skill, Convert Thunder Resistance, has immense elemental value. If you stack Thunder Resistance in the set, which we absolutely do, and even use the Feast for it, you get more value out of these Dual Blades than the Artian ones. So here's the setup with the weapon, the TU3 Dual Blades. Then for the offensive decorations, we use the Bolt for Thunder Attack 3, and then 1 level of Razor Sharp. You could also go for Handicraft there instead. Then we get 3 critical boost with the remaining slots. Looking at the gear, we have the Ray Gamma helmet, chest, and gloves. And then we have TU3 2-piece with both beta for the waist and legs. For this set, we use a talisman that has 4 attack boost total as usual, with the 1 attack in the offensive decoration. Then as the backup skill, you go for 1 weakness exploit or 1 adrenaline rush and rebalance your decorations for it. Keep in mind, you can replace the skill list however you want, as long as you end up with the same skill list. So if your talisman has element attack 3 on it, then you would use the offensive decoration slots there for attack 3 instead as an alternative. But we do have a no RNG talisman setup coming for you shortly. Anyway, this is the equipment we use with these decorations to achieve this skill list. So we have the Convert Thunder Resistance from obviously the weapon, the full weakness exploit, 4 latent power, the full counter strike, obviously Thunder Resistance is important here, that is increasing your damage with the TU3 Dual Blades, 2 constitution, 2 max might, bit of evade extender which is really nice, the 1 adrenaline and 1 burst, and a bit of random stamina surge. With that, we have a 0 bolt set bonus for TU3, giving us a nice burst of thunder on top every now and then, and obviously Thunderous Roar to extend how long latent power lasts. We also get Lord Soul from the Gamma pieces for Guts Tenacity. So a quick rundown of this math is 220 base raw, increased by 7% from Guts and Attack 4. Then we have the flat numbers, which brings us to 286.4 raw. Multiply that by the white sharpness and that gets you to 378. Then we have the reliable 62% affinity from Latent 4 and the TU3 2-piece and weakness exploit, with 3 crit boosts in the setup. So that's a 34% damage increase on the crits 62% of the time, so it averages out to 21.08. Multiply that by a last number, and that brings you to 457 and a bunch of decibels, but that averages out to 458 effective raw. Very solid. With the element, we start with 250 base element, multiplied by 20%, thanks to Ellie Attack 3, bring us to 300. Then we have the flat increases from Ellie Attack 3, Burst 1, and of course the whopping 160 from Convert Thunder Element and Thunder Resist 3, bringing us to 560 element, which is incredible for Dual Blades. If we debloat that, it's 56 true element, which we can multiply by the white sharpness for a 15% damage increase, giving us 64.4 effective element. But don't forget, we have more potential here if you're using Feasts, which will provide extra thunder resistance, pumping it even higher. So you want to be doing that. Now, of course, we have the other 4 elements that aren't able to use TU3 special Dual Blades for their element. So, of course, we're going back to Artian. So it's the same set whether using fire, dragon, ice, or water. You just re-equip the weapon with the correct decorations. So the decorations for that would be crit boost 3, the correct element, attack up 3, then you got crit element, and of course the razor sharp with the 1 bonus level of handicraft. The actual artian itself is the same as we've looked at earlier in this video, the 4 attack boost reinforcements with the 1 sharpness. Let's take a look at the set then. For the 4 other elements, we have the gore helmet in beta, Legiacrus chest in beta, the Seragios gloves in beta, the gore waist in beta, and Legiacrus legs in beta. With this, we are using the talisman for 3 attack boost, and then the 1 extra attack boost in the decoration slot to allow us to get that % attack bonus increase. With this set, you don't need the extra 1 slots, though they are beneficial for constitution, obviously. But the second skill is the important thing. You want either 1 weakness exploit or 1 adrenaline rush, like I have here. Once again, you can replace the skills in the list however you want, as long as you end up with the same list. So if the talisman has element attack on it, instead of attack boost, then you put the attack boost in your offensive decorations. And again, we'll have a no RNG version of the set in a moment. With these decorations, we achieve this skill list, providing us with full weakness exploit, in this case full constitution, the 3 adrenaline rush, full counter-strike antivirus, the 1 latent power and burst and coalescence, and then we get 1 evade window and stamina surge, which is really nice. So taking a look at the math for this set, we have 225 base raw again, 2% increase from attack 4 brings us to 229.5. We have all the flat increases, and those bring us to 290.5. Multiply that by the white sharpness, we get to 383.46. We have 71% reliable affinity from the weakness exploit, antivirus, the base artian, and then of course Legiacrus 2-piece with assumed 40% uptime, and latent 1 with the assumed 50% uptime, which would be a lot higher against Omega in the longer fight. Anyway, reliable 71% affinity with 3 crit boost, that's a 34% damage increase on the crits, 71% of the time, so it averages out to a 24.14% damage increase. Multiply that by our last number, and that brings us to 476 effective raw. With that 1 coalescence to help element boost when it is available. Again, the built-in stamina surge, the 1 free evade window. It's really nice. But as promised, if you want a no RNG talisman version of this build, you're going to have a weaker build. Not by a massive amount, but it will be weaker. But it will give you a starting point to then farm the ideal RNG talismans you might be looking for. So it's the same thing, you're using an artian weapon with the element that you care about for 4 or maybe even all 5 elements. Again, in the offensive decorations, the correct element with crit element behind it for the boost to that, 3 crit boost, and then your razor sharp handicraft as the backup, with the same reinforcement bonuses, attack boost, and then 1 sharpness. For this set, we have Shia helmet and chest in beta. We have the Omega gloves, and then the gore 2-piece from the beta version of the waist and the legs. For the non-RNG talisman, we're using 2 levels of weakness exploit, aka exploiter charm 3. Anyway, we use these decorations to achieve this skill list, which at least gives you full weakness exploit, 4 agitator, 3 constitution, 3 counter-strike and antivirus, the 1 adrenaline rush and burst, and then we get a bit of bonus from 1 divine blessing and recovery speed and flinch free. This gives you the 2-piece for gore, of course for the affinity. It gives you Zoshia's pulse for the super recovery 1, as some nice comfy aspects to this non-RNG version. Doing the math for this set, we start again with 225 base raw. We do not have any percent increases, so we get to the flat increases. With the agitator 4 with 65% assumed uptime, that brings you to 278. Multiply that by the white sharpness, and you get to 366.9. Then we have 67% reliable affinity from these sources, and 3 crit boost, 67% of the time. So overall that averages to 22.78 damage increase. Multiply that by our last number, and that brings you to the very respectable 451 effective roll. For a lack of ideal talisman setup, that is not bad. There's obviously a gap compared to 476 effective raw, but it's not otherworldly. So hopefully this gives you a starting point if you need it, and then a goal to work towards. But yeah, there you have it. That's our overview of Dual Blades in Title Update 3, with lots of options to consider. If you want to use the Mind's Eye setup for Omega hunting specifically so that you can help yourself with that Pancto Enrage phase. If not, you can go for the maximum output in the form of the 5 different element sets we talked about, or engage with the resonance stuff if you're willing to deal with the distances of other hunters for your multiplayer hunting. Plus, of course, the no RNG version if you need that starting point. So I hope all this detail was useful and understandable. And if it was, please do drop a like, it is a lot of work. For now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thank you for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.